Good morning to everybody in the paddock, and for those of you watching back at home, welcome to Race Road Texas U.S. Trophy West Series presented by XGale Motorsports. We're here at Grand Junction Motor Speedway in Grand Junction, Colorado for round 8 and the final round of the U.S. Trophy West Series, where a champion will be crowned in each of the 5 classes: Masters Max, Micro Max, Mini Max, Junior Max, and Senior Max. A lot is on the line today. My name is Alexander Sorrell. With me in the booth, Justin Prince. Justin, welcome. How are you feeling?
Thank you very much once again for having me here for the debut here for Kart Chaser today. It's an exciting day, first of all, not just to be in the booth, but to see how today fares out. The best, looking to see who comes away to close out the season on top on one of the racetracks in the country. Today's going to be a competitive one, first of all, but second, it's going to be a fun one to see which drivers get the best sense and best feel around Grand Junction today.
Yeah, I mean, you said it best, right? This is one of the best racetracks, in my opinion, that we go to around the country. We should go to it more because I know some of our Kart Chaser boys went into the rental carts yesterday. I didn't get a chance to do it, but they went on some of the Honda rental carts provided by the Grand Junction Motor Speedway racetrack, and they could not stop talking about how amazing this racetrack is to drive. They said it is one of the most satisfying tracks that they have been a part of, and I couldn't agree more just watching how well this racetrack races. We saw it yesterday throughout all 5 classes, the amount of passing opportunities this track provides, the satisfaction that it, delivers when you put a lap down that is, good enough for pole or a solid lap. So, yeah, we'll continue to talk about this racetrack throughout the day because of the racing that it's, guaranteed to provide. But something to note, we went counterclockwise yesterday. Today, we are going clockwise. So that's why if you watched yesterday and now you're tuning in today and saying, hold on, they're going backwards. Well, it's because they are. And they have limited track time on this layout. They got to do it a little bit on Friday, but now they have to re-rack their brain after what happened yesterday and go backwards today on the clockwise layout. So let's walk you through a lap here. That's Nick Eggleston. He's 3rd in points heading into today. So now the first turn is a pretty quick right-hander into a tighter right-hander. You have to hold it right, and now it's a flowing left sweeping corner. Now onto what we call banana straightaway. Up the hill now instead of what it was down the hill, into what's going to be a very tight and technical section of the racetrack. A tight right-hander here into a downhill S section of the racetrack. Avoid the first curb on your right. You want to use the rest of these curbs here that are provided to you just to get the kart to rotate more properly there. A fast left sweeper into a fast uphill section of the racetrack. And now there's only 3 corners left to navigate. A tight right-hander, one of the best passing opportunities on the racetrack. Down the hill, a fast left-hander into an even quicker right-hand section of the racetrack and onto the front straightaway to complete a lap around the clockwise layout of Grand Junction Motor Speedway. I tell you what, Justin, from yesterday to today, this layout looks to be even more technical. Maybe slightly less passing opportunities, but these drivers will, they won't cease to amaze me, I'd say. And turn 1 looks to be a great passing opportunity. Turn 2 as well. You climb the hill here like Eggleston is into a tight braking zone. Anytime you have a hard braking zone, it's a great passing opportunity. So I cannot wait to see the racing action unfold later this afternoon.
Yeah, especially when looking towards what to expect here. A lot of tight sections, though, once you go through turn 1 with the amount of runoff area. Some of these drivers just about clipping the dirt. Just how tight they're getting off towards some of the rumble strip areas here. That could be potentially a bottleneck portion, some of the side-by-side, if you start to battle here. But I do think with the track being flipped, you're talking about essentially the start and finish line moving towards the start of the straightaway instead of the very tail end, where it would have been drag race yesterday for that front stretch. Now it's essentially you come out of turn 13 straight to the checker flag. You better get a good rhythm for the right-hander. That leads to a lot of drag race opportunities possibly for the first corner instead down that hillside.
Yeah, that's a great point. And actually, in a couple of the races that we saw yesterday, there was drag races to the line. So that essentially eliminated because of the straightaway being closer to the exit of the final corner. But something else to note, with the final 2 corners being a fast, left-right section of the racetrack, it'll make it tougher for last corner, maybe penultimate corner passes. So to me, this corner right here, as you climb the hill with 3 corners to go, is going to be the passing opportunity of the racetrack in terms of you need to get your move done here because you can't afford to wait till these 2 corners to get your move done because drivers can essentially defend the inside of the left-hander and hold the inside of the right-hander. It'll create for some over-under opportunities, but I think this layout of racetrack is going to require a slightly more strategic driving from these drivers if they want to walk away with a victory. Nonetheless, this is Junior Max on the racetrack right now. They put on an absolute show for us yesterday. There's Nick Eggleston on your screen. He started on pole for the final yesterday. Gage Korn had to start from the tail end of the field after having 2 GoPros on the go-kart. You're only allotted to have 1 on your kart. Nonetheless, it didn't halt him at all. Gage Korn drove all the way through the field and completed a last to first challenge, extending his points lead on the field. Heading into today, though, it's only about a 10-point advantage between Gage Korn and Antoine Lemieux, and then Nick Eggleston is a few points back from that. So a 3-way title fight to decide who wins the championship and who gets a ticket to the grand finals later this year.
Yeah, an extremely tight battle. We were talking about this a lot coming into today because of how competitive things have gone. And Korn's had a lot of momentum. terms of looking towards some of the max point tallies you can get, he's picked up a lot of those max points runs over the past couple weeks coming into today. But however, you still have to be able to get a clean run. Having pace in the first day is great, absolutely huge to be able to help with the championship fight. Lemieux, though, he's also been in the conversation. He's usually been in that second or third spot much of the way based on the point tallies throughout this season so far. And throw in Eggleston, who's been showing good pace already in this facility, second yesterday, as you said on the podium. It's going to be where you need to be able to limit any mistakes today, especially if you're Korn, because the second there's a mistake, Lemieux takes advantage. If both of them have major mistakes, Eggleston has a great chance to pounce.
Yeah, for sure. Something else to note here, if you are Gage Korn, with having such a consistent season all throughout, you can kind of afford to, throw everything at it today, knowing that, your worst weekend is a point total of 145 points. To put that into perspective, maximum points up for grabs for a heat and a final is 55. So that means for a day's work, 165 points are up for grabs. So for Gage Korn to have his lowest points total of the year at 145, that's pretty solid. You can afford to have a bad day today and use it as your drop. And so that is something that, if I'm a points leader heading into a day knowing that I could clinch a championship, knowing that my worst day is better than my competitors, that's something that must make them feel pretty good.
Absolutely, and I think as well, the reason you just see the celebration with the clock starting to reach zeros for this grouping pretty soon, Gage Korn is currently the fastest on the track by 1.5 tenths right now. He's been setting lap times on average up to 2 to 3 tenths throughout this entire session. Korn is absolutely feeling the rhythm for this field.
Yeah, Gage Korn, last lap there, was able to, for Lemieux at least, put the gap at about 400th of a second between himself and Gage Korn. So a good final lap for Lemieux, the main rival to Gage Korn in the championship standings. That makes things very enticing for us to watch how this is going to unfold, knowing that the top two in the junior max standings are 1 and 2 after warm-up. Now, obviously, that's warm-up. You don't really know how they set up the go-kart. You really will never know because they probably won't give you their secrets. But what I can say is you look down the order, best laps coming in at lap 7 and lap 8. When qualifying rolls around in about an hour time, that lap time will be about lap 3 or lap 4. It's what we call the money lap. But in warm-up, it's very common to see lap 7, lap 8 be that best lap for these drivers. They're getting acclimated to a new racetrack because it's now clockwise instead of counterclockwise, and just getting used to things, testing for the heat races later today, seeing where their tires come into play. So no surprise there to see, lap 7, lap 8 be the lap for those guys in warm-up. Nonetheless, that was your Junior Max warm-up session. On the racetrack now is the Mini and Micro Max categories. It's a combined class this weekend. Staggered starts for when the heat races roll around, but for the Mini and Micro class, 3 drivers in Mini, about 10 in the Micro Max category. In Mini, it's all about Jackson Porter. He's been incredibly dominant all year long, but the 177 on your screen right now, that's Isaac Payne. He's had limited, seat time in these Rotax karts this year, only did one other weekend with the US Trophy West Series, but this weekend he's joined us back again, and he put the fight to Jackson Porter. Ultimately, Porter came out on top, but Isaac Payne was incredibly fast yesterday. It came down to a last lap, last corner pass between the two of them to decide who came out on top. I expect more of the same today for Gage Grant. He comes into this weekend second in the Mini Max points, but the points total as it stands, Jackson Porter, I think, has a lead that may be a little too insurmountable to for Gage Grant, but there's still one more day of racing to go to decide it.
Yeah, especially since coming into the day and through the week, should say, it was about that 55-point difference between the two of them, full race victory. It's very difficult to lose the points lead if you have any major troubles, but you have a lot that can happen over the course of a heat, and especially over the course of the race itself. So at this point, I wouldn't be surprised based on the fact of what we've seen and talked about so far. We see someone like a Payne be able to place more, at least in that respective class, because he showed good pace throughout this racetrack so far this entire week.
Yeah, they've all been incredibly quick. But on the Micromax side of things, that's where it got really, really interesting. Lucas Tarango heads into today with a big points buffer, but his main rival yesterday was actually Cam Becker. He was at the first couple rounds of the U.S. Trophy West Series, didn't show up to the others, so he's not in it for a championship fight, but he's in it for the chance at a victory. And yesterday, arguably, the fastest driver on the racetrack was the number 16 machine of Cam Becker. He spun in that final all by himself, went to the back of the field, and in 12 laps, drove through the field, finished second, just a couple of seconds behind Lucas Tarango. If that spin didn't happen, arguably had a chance at a victory. But on your screen, that's the number 7 machine, the orange and black go-kart of Lucas Tarango. No one has had anything to say about the pace that he has shown all season long, and that's why he is in with the best chance of the Micromax grid to win a ticket to the U.S. Trophy Final.
Yeah, but keeping an eye on this, especially knowing he was one of the top drivers last year. He was amongst those who took third place in the 2023 season finales back last May. So there's some expectations there for him especially. Build up that, get the championship. You have the experience, now just get the job done in this type of a series. He also, remember, was amongst those in the top 10 in last year's trophy final in general. So he has some good pace. I think it's going to be all that much sweeter, though, to be able to get the championship for the West.
Yeah, exactly, right? Heading to this year, we knew Tarango had the pace. Now, can he get it done at the highest level? And so far, it looks as though he has a great chance to get it done today in Grand Junction, Colorado. But looking at timing and scoring as it stands, we're only about 3 laps in to this warm-up session. It's Isaac Payne who leads Gage Grant there. It looks as though Jackson Porter is not out there on the racetrack as it stands. So it's Payne ahead of Gage Grant in the Mini Max class. And in Micromax, so far, Cam Becker leads the group ahead of Connor Lipka. And then it's Lucas Tarango. So for Tarango right now in warm-up, obviously it's just warm-up. You really don't know what they're testing. You don't know where their tire pressures are at. And for some of these drivers who have limited seat time on this layout of racetrack, you really don't know exactly, where their pace is going to come from. But this is a good sign for the rest of the Micromax grid, knowing that Tarango right now, the driver that they've been struggling to beat all year long, sits third in the warm-up session. We still have about 3 minutes to go, though.
Yeah, and you mentioned the tires there. Of course, the more laps you turn, the higher the tire pressures. Obviously, when you first get things going, you start a little bit lower on the tire pressure with the cold temps. The hot temperatures, getting that balance right when you're on the track is also critical, because essentially it's almost like a tire curve or a temperature curve when it comes to the tires in general, regardless of whether it's a go-kart or whether it's a big road car, anything like that. You have too high tire pressures or tire temperatures, you're going to struggle or you're going to burn up the rubber. If they're too cold, it's harder to get a grip on the racetrack, a bit more slidey. If anything, you're nearly driving on the rims. So it's about getting that feel right, getting those pressures right, getting that information data to your team and ready to go by the time you get into the full pace of the qualifying and races today.
Yeah, and that's going to be the toughest thing that these drivers are going to face on a layout that they're not that familiar with, right? Haven't driven it for a couple of days. You're used to going counterclockwise. Now you're going clockwise, right? Tire pressures will be slightly different because all of a sudden, instead of going one way, you're going the other way, right? You're mainly driving now with the left side of your kart loaded a lot more than the right side of your kart. So potential change in tire pressures, right? It's a new day. Sun is out. Yesterday, the sun really didn't come out for a majority of the day. We had weather looming in the area. It didn't really come to fruition. So for some of the drivers that did their rain dance, it worked or didn't work for some drivers' case. So I think today it'll be interesting to see, who's quick early. That gives you an idea of who's, maybe prepared or who can adapt quicker. But when it comes to qualifying, like I mentioned earlier, that money lap, lap 3, lap 4, lap 5 even, that'll be a telltale for who we can expect to be fast in the heat races, which are about 10 laps and 8 laps depending on your class. So, yeah, you said it best, right? Tire pressures are key, and at a racetrack like this, you really want to have that balance between maybe going not high enough to where your tires come in too soon and then you have a fall off at the end of the race, or you don't want to go too low to where your tires really never get in that window and you're lacking grip all day long.
Yeah, that balance, something to keep an eye on, absolutely. But I will say this, we've had someone break the 1 minute mark in this session. Isaac Payne seems to be on it in that 177. You still have, meanwhile, with the micros, Cam Becker's been the quickest in that group in the 1 minute .6s at the current rate. These drivers, as you said, getting faster and faster once they get the field together, but it's going to be interesting what Tarango, in turn, is testing here as the session gets ready to close up here.
Yeah, checkered flag is now out for the Micromax drivers. Still one more lap to go for Isaac Payne on your screen right now, who, like you said, the only driver to break the 1 minute mark of 59.9. Absolutely flying right now is the 177 of 59.6. 1-4. Wow. That's a stormer of a lap there for Isaac Payne. Puts 5 tenths between himself and Gage Grant here in the warm-up session in Minimax. That is a stamp on the field. Cam Becker, impressive for him. The number 16 MPG driver, I mentioned it yesterday, arguably the fastest driver going counterclockwise. A few mistakes, cost him a chance at a victory, but nonetheless, the fastest Micromax driver here this morning. Connor Lipka, impressive there on the comp cart in second. Lucas Tarango there, a personal best on the final lap of warm-up to put himself third here in Micromax, but it's Isaac Payne and Cam Becker leads Mini and Micromax warm-up session.
Yeah, Payne, I think, just kind of started to settle in some of the tempo there, but it is to be said he's amongst those, I think, who will do very well throughout the day, as we talked about, especially knowing the history, especially knowing as well, when you look at things, he's amongst those who's done well in this region of karting in these classes before.
Look at the view in the background there. There's not many racetracks in the country that you get the sun out, you get a beautiful racetrack, and you get the mountains in the background. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, Justin, I know you do a lot of the sim racing stuff. You've been at racetracks before, though, but have you seen anything like this?
Nothing in the middle of the mountainsides of Colorado. No, I've never had the chance to go to the state before in terms of being there physically. But it's a pristine and beautiful region when you look at pictures, when you look at the mountainsides, when you think about the Rockies in general. It's a lot of elevation, and it's a different feel and a different community in general when it comes to, you're talking about a high elevation in general for the entire state. It takes a lot to be able to get good rhythm at a track like this as a result with the higher altitudes in the whole state.
Yeah, I mean, higher altitudes means slightly difficulties. Sometimes, we're not high enough to where you're having trouble, breathing all the way. But I think it does take a little bit more of a physical toll to drive a racetrack like this in higher altitudes. So, again, just kudos to all the drivers out there, doing what they're doing out here. But, nonetheless, a beautiful facility, beautiful racetrack. Every driver that I've spoke to that has driven around here has said that we need to go here more often, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, the scenery in the background, plus how satisfying this racetrack is to drive. It's unbelievable to just watch. I can't get over the view of the mountains in the background. For somebody who, I'm not like some of our producers like Trevor Blue, like Brandon Simone, who love going hiking, but I've done it with them before in Utah, and it was a good time. So I can't imagine what it was like to go to the mountainside earlier this week for those guys. So, I mean, yeah, it makes me want to go back to Colorado. I haven't been there in a while, but I need to go back now and visit this racetrack again.
And we've seen a great racetrack in general. We'll say the Masters Max is on the racetrack, though, climbing up and down the mountainsides and up and down the elevation of the racetrack. And a lot of interesting storylines in talking about this. One driver came to mind in terms of our discussions, Christopher Mann. He's actually amongst those who raced a fair bit on the sim racing side, too, and raced the multiple different amount of classes in general. Seems to be Muscles looking very solid, at least keeping track of things here, trying to get the times down. They're in the 56-second bracket.
Yeah, yesterday we saw in the Masters Max class a very tight race between Christopher Mann, Billy Cleveland, and Clayton Kessler. I expect more of the same here. Those are the three drivers on your screen. Clayton Kessler was arguably the fastest over one lap, but over the course of a race, it was Billy Cleveland who was able to outsmart the rest of them, play the patient game, play the long game, and it paid off for the driver in the 658 machine, the red-white, and the red and white go-kart with the blue helmet. But Clayton Kessler there on board the comp cart looks quick, looks racy early on here in the warm-up session. Remember, two karts tend to be faster than one. We saw it yesterday. If you're able to work with a buddy, it's gonna pay off for you in the long run. We're seeing it here with Billy Cleveland and Christopher Mann working well together. Clayton Kessler trying to get to the bumper of Billy Cleveland here, but it's not working out for him as it stands. So let's see what this lap has to offer in terms of Billy Cleveland. It wouldn't shock me if he goes purple. You can see the run you get with the draft. He says, you know what, I'm going to go to the inside. I'm going to go through. I want to lead this train. So these Master Max guys, it's kind of an unwritten agreement, I'd say, heading into warm-up, saying, you know what, we're going to each lead maybe a couple laps here, learn from each other, you know, continuing to better ourselves. And that's what we're seeing here with these three drivers who know that after yesterday's races, this is the three that we're going to see all day long in the heats and the final, battled out for a win.
Especially with drivers like Cleveland being champion in the past when it comes to this class, around the 2010s, in fact, where he did really well. It's going to be another one of those types of races in general. When you know you have a chance to go straight to the grand final, you're going to go back and forth. You're going to have the fierce battle. And I think it's why they're trying to get the feel of the draft and feel of how much they're going to pace each other right now, because this is essentially like a race run where you're all bunched together, need to figure out how it's going to feel. And we've had one car, I think, stall at the far end of the racetrack.
Yeah, that was turn one. Clayton Kessler, we saw on the top of our screen while we're watching Mann and Cleveland. Kessler locked up the rear axle, spun it around in turn one. So it gives you an idea for a driver of his caliber, of his experience levels. It's still easy to make mistakes here in the warm-up session. That's why we have the warm-up session, right? These drivers a little bit maybe rusty on this layout. It's been a couple days since they've driven the clockwise layout. Wasn't used to that corner being maybe a tighter braking zone than what it was yesterday. And so going into it the reverse way, this is one of the hardest braking zones on the racetrack, but it's also a fast corner into a tighter right-hander. So for Clayton Kessler to loop it around there, not only did it kind of maybe, you know, put a wrench in your confidence, it also, you lose the draft a little bit between Mann and Cleveland, as I think Cleveland might have pulled into the pits there. So now it's just Christopher Mann out there on the racetrack on his lonesome there between himself and Billy Cleveland.
Yeah, talking about Kessler in particular, though, even with what just happened in turn one, he's still one of the fastest, of course, has been amongst those also active in designing a lot of schemes and designing karts. Whenever you look at him on the social medias, posts all the time about the different design variations he's done over the years, along with the different racetracks, very active in that part. But getting to Christopher Mann. Mann right now just took the top time of the practice session with 2 minutes left. How about a near full second of pickup as the tires have heated up today? These cars seem to be really quick once you get those tires within that 5-lap window you were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, in the warm-up session, it's expected to see them continue to pick up the pace, ramp up as they get used to the layout, get used to their setup. Maybe what they're trying isn't really working out for him, but for Christopher Mann, what he's trying is definitely working out. 2/10 between himself and Clayton Kessler, Billy Cleveland there in third. Mann, one of the only drivers on the racetrack as it stands. He's done 5 laps. The rest of the field has only done 3 laps here in the warm-up session. But for Mann, hand in the air, he says, all right, you know what? If I'm the only guy on the racetrack, I might as well come into the pits and park it. There's one other driver on the racetrack as well, but for Mann, his main rivals, Kessler and Cleveland, are now in. And so with a minute and a half to go, the 606 machine of Michael Haltala remains on the track. Let's see if he decides to go around for another lap. Nope, hand in the air. He is also going to follow through and run into the pit lane, and that's 687 of Rene Bine. He's going through the final couple corners now. Was he going to go for another lap? he will. Rene Bynes going to continue out for this warm-up session. So the only driver on the racetrack now is 687. He has about 2 seconds to find to get up to what Christopher Mann is doing. But we saw yesterday, as the sessions went on, Rene found more and more pace, and I expect the same thing here.
I think that's the huge expectation, right? You don't want to end up being, in some of the cars' cases like mine, where you're on the back foot right now. His best time is 7/10 off the closest. I'm not panicking because it's a warm-up. It's get a feel of the racetrack, get a feel of the setup, get a feel of everything. Make sure you know your limitations, like can I hit those curves we just seen to the S's, or can I go this portion of the racetrack? Is this going to be faster or slower at this portion? It's a whole discussion point in terms of being able to get the right rhythm for the racetrack on the practice.
Exactly. So, warm-up has now ended. Checkered flag is out. So for Rene Bynes, this is going to be the last lap for him in the warm-up session. There it is. Yellow's out. That means that the warm-up is done here for your Masters Max drivers. The seniors are out and ready to go for their warm-up session, but we'll take a quick commercial break before we get ready for the senior Max warm-up.
So you finally want to get behind the wheel, huh?
Yeah, I've been shooting for 3 years and I've never got to drive.
Well, you're gonna need some more gear than just your helmet. Why don't you go to shopakr.com. They got their inventory online and they'll ship it the same day if you order before 5:30 p.m. Eastern.
They got shoes,
Yep,
gloves,
yep,
rib protectors.
got those too.
Can they make me go fast?
No.
Here at Acceleration Kart Racing, we've got everything you need to get on track. What happens next, well, that's on you. Check us out online at shopakr.com.
Here at MPG Motorsports, our main goal is to provide the best pathway to professional motorsports for our entire team, drivers and mechanics alike. We're based out of Whiteland Raceway Park in Indiana. For more information, contact us at chase@mpg-motorsports.com.
Studies show that even the best current generation of simulators only convince 50% of the human brain that they are real. Here at Simcraft, that just isn't realistic enough. Developed to offer the most realistic karting sim experience in the world, all testing has shown that the physics engine used in Simcraft's Grid 1 model convinces 90% of the human brain that you are actually on track. Now that is the real deal.
Here to Grand Junction Motor Speedway for round 8 of Race Road Tax's U.S. Trophy West Series, presented by Xscale Motorsports. Senior Max go-karts have hit the racetrack for their warm-up session. There's a lot to talk about here. Cooper Auclair yesterday got the job done. He won the $2,000 that was put on the line by Jesse Nolan, the owner of Grand Junction Motor Speedway, to win in yesterday's Senior Max race. But today, even more on the line. There's a championship at stake for Cooper Auclair, who heads into this weekend with a sizable advantage over Frederic Lemieux in second place for points. And if yesterday's races are anything to go off of, with Lemieux having a rough day and Auclair having a near perfect day, it looks pretty good for Cooper Auclair to walk away with a ticket to the grand finals in Sarno.
Yeah, so far throughout the entire week, that 321 machines look very confident. It's going to be hard to beat them once again, especially when you look at the track record Amongst those are the top 30 in the country in some of the rankings like RMC Grand Finals last year in the Senior Max. Amongst those are the top 10 in the Trophy Final last year, who's really taken a big step up. Eau Claire's on it. It's just right now, can you get it done on Championship Day?
We'll have to wait and find out. But for Eau Claire, it looks pretty good for him today. Like I mentioned earlier, the buffer that he has on the field, knowing that he has basically a near perfect day yesterday, a great consistent championship throughout the year, he can afford to have a bad day and use it as his drop weekend, or his drop day, should I say. So for round 8 here for Eau Claire, the final round of the Trophy West Series, it looks pretty good for him to walk away with the title. But for the likes of second place, third place drivers such as Frederick Lemieux, Gio Santora, Griffin Dowler in the mix as well, it's not over for them, right? There's 165 points on the line for a day's work. 55 for the heats, 55 for the finals. So for the likes of Lemieux, Dowler, Santora, their one goal is going to be that driver on your screen right there, Cooper Eau Claire. But how about it for the 397? That's Frederick Lemieux right in front of Eau Claire. So ironically, 1 and 2 of the championship sit 1 and 2 here in the warm-up on the racetrack as it stands. Eau Claire behind Lemieux. Lemieux trying to make amends for a pretty rough day yesterday. She really couldn't, get forward progress, it seems, right? Qualified 8th, pretty solid, but in each of the heats, either got spun around or had a DNF in either of the two. And in the final, just couldn't make anything happen. Finished in 12th after getting shuffled back early on in the race. So for Lemieux, it's all about really making amends for a rough day yesterday. The pressure is now on because she knows that yesterday's round number 7 is most likely going to become her drop weekend, her drop day. And so today now there's an added pressure to go out there and perform, knowing that this is the last chance to claw any points back at a championship victory.
Extreme amount of pressure, to be quite frank, when it comes to that, because you don't want to end up having to rely upon your drop. That's one of the main mindsets as a driver. That's one of the main mindsets where you don't want to say, I can afford making a mistake someday or some weeks. There's always the drop. No. That's the difficult part, is keeping it clean and making sure you don't rely upon it. Now that you're in that situation, though, it's to where you have to push hard. Keep in mind, Lemieux, one of 7 females from last year's Grand Finals who actually raced in the E20 electric karts last year in those Grand Finals, has a lot of experience against some of the best in the world. I think Lemieux is absolutely going to bounce back today. However, it's going to need a lot of mistakes from Eau Claire, possibly to close up some of that point buffer, as you said, depending on how the points fall for the closing of the season.
There's a look at the 301 Giovanni Santora, Eau Claire's team. He has been incredibly quick this weekend. So too has Theo Cacati. It was quick over at Amarillo, quick again this weekend. The comp carts look fast around Grand Junction Motor Speedway. Another driver that's been pretty quick this morning, Joel Lewis, was inside the top 10 in yesterday's counterclockwise layout. The clockwise layout seems to suit his driving style even more. Sits inside the top 5 as Griffin Dowler puts himself 3rd here in the warm-up. There's Dowler making a move on Dylan Archer. So Dowler seems pretty aggressive here in this warm-up session. The all-red, red speed chassis, red suit, red helmet. Cannot miss him. One of the coolest livery suit helmet combinations that we have out here in the Rotax US Trophy West Series. How about that? 2 drivers in front of him, Theo Cacati and Adam Rylance. Hasn't been in a go-kart in a race situation since Super Nationals last year. The blue helmet with the blue livery and red on one side. It's one of the coolest liveries that I've seen in quite some time with the 50-50 split. And he's been quick, impressive to put himself top 6 in every session yesterday, considering he's up against drivers that have been in the kart for quite a bit throughout the year, from January all the way through May. And for Rylance, having not been in a race situation since November of last year, there goes Dowler to the inside. Let's see if Rylance and Dowler can work together here and put a flyer of a lap in warm-up. Speaking of a flyer of a lap, Cooper Eau Claire last time by a 53.857. The only 2 drivers to be in the 53s as it stands is Eau Claire and Cacati, his teammates. and then Santora in 4th. So it's a Comp Kart 1, 2, 4. Griffin Dowler splits them up in 3rd as it stands. Savannah Callis, that's a driver that sits 6th in the points heading to this weekend. She is 5th as it stands.
Yeah, and each of these drivers already getting mightily close here. Looks like at least one of the drivers in that line noticing something's off. Seen a lot of shaking from the front clip there through the guesses. But was about to say, when it comes to what we've talked about already, Kakati in particular, I think is amongst those, again, who's going to be lightning quick. 2nd yesterday, but was also top 10 in the world in the grand final in Senior Max, and also amongst those in the top 30 in the International Trophy. So right now, Kakati, I think, might be one of the drivers that could, if anything, help to close up the gap for Lemieux to Eau Claire if Kakati steals away some points from Eau Claire.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? We were talking about it yesterday as well with the likes of Kakati, likes of Adam Rylance, and others. Drivers that aren't in with a chance at a championship, but they are fast enough to go out there and claim a race victory or at least split up some of the championship contenders. Their one mindset is, I want to go out there and win a trophy, right? I want to go out there and I'm racing for pride at this point to go out there and get a win. And so for Theo Kakati, yeah, his teammate leads the points, but he wants to go out there and claim a victory. And if yesterday's final is anything to go off of, Kakati and Eau Claire were going at it all throughout the race, with Eau Claire with a late lunge with 2 to go to steal it from Kakati. So if that race is anything to prove, Theo Kakati is not going to just let Cooper Eau Claire get the victory. He knows that at this point, he's going to have Eau Claire earn it. And I cannot wait to see how these races unfold later this afternoon. But as the checkered flag flies, Eau Claire and Kakati 1 and 2 in warm-up, Dowler 3rd, Santora, Callis in 5th, and that is Joel Lewis, Dylan Archer, Adam Rylance, Hone, and Landon Billy in 10th. Frederick Lemieux struggled in the warm-up session this morning. She sits 14th, has some work to do. Got to go back to the drawing board if she wants to find some lap time for qualifying.
Yeah, and there was a lot of traffic in her group, at least from what I noticed, but at the same time, got to pick up the tempo, got to be able to run well. It's going to be important, the qualifying session pretty soon, to pick up an extra second.
Well, that's your final warm-up session of the morning. Look at the view that we have here in Grand Junction, Colorado. The mountains in the background, the sun is out. Just a few clouds there on the mountaintops. It doesn't get much better than this, but we're going to take a quick 30-minute break while the drivers get ready, make any last-minute changes they need to do before qualifying rolls around.
So you finally want to get behind the wheel, huh?
Yeah, I've been shooting for 3 years and I've never got to drive.
Well, you're gonna need some more gear than just your helmet. Why don't you go to shopakr.com? They got their inventory online and they'll ship it the same day if you order before 5:30 p.m. Eastern.
They got shoes,
Yep,
gloves,
yep,
rib protectors.
got those too.
Can they make me go fast?
No. Here at Acceleration Kart Racing, we've got everything you need to get on track. What happens next, well, that's on you. Check us out online at shopakr.com.
Here at MPG Motorsports, our main goal is to provide the best pathway into professional motorsports for our entire team, drivers and mechanics alike. We're based out of Whiteland Raceway Park in Indiana. For more information, contact us at chase@mpg-motorsports.com.
Studies show that that even the best current generation of simulators only convince 50% of the human brain that they are real. Here at Simcraft, that just isn't realistic enough. Developed to offer the most realistic karting sim experience in the world, all testing has shown that the physics engine used in Simcraft's Grid 1 model convinces 90% of the human brain that you are actually on track. Now that is the real deal.
We're at a commercial break. Are you looking for an advantage in your competition? Well, Kart Class has done the hard work for you. We've travelled to your racetracks to give you the inside knowledge. So what does Kart Class offer? We've got drone footage that captures the racing lines, visual markers for your braking points, acceleration zones, and the best overtake opportunities on your racetrack. Pedal cam to show you where to brake and when to accelerate, and 360-degree footage to make sure you don't miss any parts on the racetrack. We've covered 13 racetracks in the United States, and Australia, you're up next. So visit kartclass.com to get your track information.
Here at MPG Motorsports, our main goal is to provide the best pathway to professional motorsports for our entire team, drivers and mechanics alike. based out of Whiteland Raceway Park in Indiana. For more information, contact us at chase@mpg-motorsports.com.
Can you hear it? 1 week where the silence is broken. "394 drivers, 60 nations, united in their goal to be the best, the very best."
This is the most equal race in the whole world. I will win. There's no opportunity.
No one has ever won junior, senior and DD2 before, and that's what we are aiming for this week.
1 week where every second counts. Every corner, every pass. The competition does not get tougher than this, closer than this, more intense than this. "7 days full of pride, passion, your nation, your roots. Our family is united from all corners of the globe, now together as one. 1 week to change your future, your career, your life. The time is now. Be bold, be brave, be brilliant. Stand tall and celebrate. This is your week. And when all is said and done, and the silence returns, 12 months of hard work is about this week. 1 week. The 2022 Rotax Grand Finals.
Welcome back here to Grand Junction Motor Speedway in Grand Junction, Colorado. This is round 8 of Race Rotax's U.S. Trophy West Series presented by XGL Motorsports. After that 30-minute break between warm-up and qualifying, it's now time to go qualifying, starting with the Junior Max class. 7 drivers make up the grid here, but the order in which they are going to start the heat races is yet to be decided. That's what qualifying is all about. A 10-minute session here for these drivers to try and navigate and get the best lap possible. We're seeing some of these drivers like Kyle Drysdale, like DeChesney, like Malatesta in this group, just trying to slot in line, see where they stack up in the order. Maybe get a drafting buddy to work with, because that is important at a track like this with long straightaways. But we mentioned it in warm-up, right? Lap 3, lap 4, lap 5 tends to be the money lap. So this first maybe 2, even 3 laps, it's for these drivers to get acclimated to the track, see if what they have underneath them is a good setup or not. Doesn't quite matter that much because you're out on the racetrack for just 10 minutes. But nonetheless, it's important to go out there and find a buddy to work with. Or if you're the likes of Eggleston further back there in Gage Corn, maybe you want to go solo. You feel as though driving by yourself is quicker than a drafting buddy.
Well, that's an interesting point to bring up, because in a lot of cases, depending on how things go, the draft helps for the straightaways. But it's almost like if you end up having someone in front of you, it ends up messing yourself up, so to speak. It's in you're trying to follow that driver, try and follow their tire tracks, you try and match their line, then you go into the corner, either they hold you up, or you end up following them off the racetrack, or you end up slowing yourself down because you want to set yourself up for a better straightaway, anything along those lines. It's almost a balancing act that way, and that's why some people end up, in some cases, we've seen in real life and depending on the series, go much quicker. In fact, you might get to the spot where you say, you know what, I want to make some passes here in qualifying. You know what, I want to be the leader of a group. It's almost like a balancing act and almost a wrestling match to see who wants to control a draft pack in many of these cases to try and improve their case for qualifying.
Yeah, well, so far you saw Malatesta there, was third in the group, now wants to lead this pack of 4 go-karts. That's the green and black machine. Xander Malatesta behind him, Mason DeChesney. Then that's Kyle Drysdale. Struggled a bit yesterday for pace. Looks to be quicker today, but not as quick as the 224 of Nick Eggleston. He's actually by himself here. There's a pack of 3, then it's Lemieux by himself, and then Eggleston by himself. 6/10 on the field as it stands at the moment. His main competitor in the championship, Gage Corn, sits in 5th, but now with his second flying lap in the books, 2nd place as it stands for Gage Corn. These next 2 laps are what we can expect to be the money lap, the lap that counts the most. And for Nick Eggleston, he might have timed it to perfection. He's catching up to the rear bumper of Antoine Lemieux. If he can time it, properly for this next lap coming up, he might be able to get a great tow down the front and back straightaways. We'll have to wait and see as they round the penultimate corner and onto the final corner here to complete lap number 3 in the books. Where do they stack up as the timing starts to tick down here? Eggleston 5/10 on the rest of the field, but Gage Corn is still yet to complete his lap. But as it stands, Eggleston absolutely flying, the only driver in the 54s as it stands in qualifying, and now he's got a tow here on the blue and white machine of Antoine Lemieux. Gage Corn crosses the stripe. He puts himself 2nd. Cadence Presley up to 3rd there, 3/10 back from what the pole sitter has done so far. Eggleston, it looks good, but he caught up to Lemieux a little too soon there. You saw him back out of it. That's smart driving. That's really experienced stuff from Nick Eggleston. Says, you know what? This lap has been compromised. I'd rather back off, cool the tires down, and get one more out of it here. You see him getting some heat back in the tires. He's going to regroup, reset, maybe get 1 or 2 more out of it around the final corner. This will be a slow lap for Eggleston, but if he can time it properly, he'll get back up to the tow here and possibly extend his advantage on the field.
Yeah, full push lap at that point right now, because again, in the middle of the pack, you can get some draft, yes, but you also feel that pressure from behind. Almost feel like in a lot of cases it's better to try and get a quadruple toad, so to speak, rather than try and be in the heart of the field and have checkups like that. So a good chance for a pickup here as a result of that pole, especially if he can keep up. Almost seems like though he's struggling to keep up with that draft train, they've nearly ditched him in the draft train.
Yeah, potentially there. He lifted a little bit too much in my opinion, but you can see in the break zone there, doing everything he can to wheel that go-kart around this Grand Junction Motor Speedway. I still think this lap is going to be good. If not this one, then the next one for sure. But now that the drivers in front of him have heat in their tires, temp is up, Gage Korn puts himself between 1100th between himself and Eggleston. So they're both in the 54.9 range. Xander Malatesta is the fastest of the group in front of Eggleston there. He slots into third, Presley fourth, Antoine Lemieux. He went into this weekend second in the points. He sits fifth. DeChesney sixth. Kyle Drysdale really struggling for pace as it stands. Needs 7/10 to catch up to what the leader is doing for pole. Here's Gage Korn. We haven't seen him all qualifying long. He's been quick, improving his lap time every single time he crosses the stripe. Last time around, though, lap times start to fall the opposite direction. So, like I mentioned, lap 3, lap 4 is the money lap. For Eggleston and Gage Korn, their last lap they crossed the line was about 2/10 slower than their personal best lap time. So maybe that might have been it for the tire window. We'll have to wait and see this time around. No, Eggleston resets purple lap, 54.962. Extends his advantage by about 100th of a second. Gage Korn hops out of his seat, trying to get every bit of horsepower out of that go-kart. 1 corner to go, 1 minute to go here in qualifying. Can Gage Korn reclaim top spot? He does. 54.945. 1700th quicker than what Eggleston was able to do.
Well, how about that? And that gets to the point that I was kind of making in terms of the draft. Sometimes you feel a lot more comfortable just hot lapping with no one around, just a full blank slate in front. You're able to focus a little bit more and in turn puts himself more pressure. It helps, in my opinion, more so in the corners when you don't have as much traffic in front of you, even with that draft effect. And that's already been showcasing itself for parts of this session here, especially for Korn.
Wow, Nix Eggleston, a personal best 54.948. 0.003 of a second separates first and second in the championship. First and second on the racetrack as it stands. It's 15 seconds to go, so 2 more laps left in qualifying. Gage Korn, 54.882. He extends his advantage on the field by 0.06 of a second. This is incredible to watch 2 drivers at the top of their game continue to, prove what is possible around Grand Junction Motor Speedway. The 2 of them have about 0.3 on the rest of the field. Eggleston looks like he's off the pace as it stands. Maybe he's giving himself a bit more room to go for 1 more lap. Maybe he feels as though he can't get any more out of that go-kart. For Gage Korn, he's still on it here. He knows there's 1 more lap in the qualifying for him. He doesn't know where anybody else stands. He just knows where he stands when he looks at his Micron. 3 corners to navigate here for Gage Korn. 2 now, still up on the wheel, still trying to get every bit of speed out of that MPG Motorsports chassis. Final corner, checkered flag waves. Can Gage Korn improve? Cannot. So, as it stands, Gage Korn has seen the checkered flag. His qualifying is done, provisionally on pole position. Can Eggleston, Malatesta, Lemieux, Drysdale, or Presley have anything to say about it? As it stands, they cannot. This is going to be Gage Korn on pole position here in Junior Max.
And how about that? Again, you talked about the importance of draft, and then you have someone without the draft set the fastest time. Again, hot lap pace is critical. Being able to focus takes, in turn, a lot of space. And for when it comes to Gage Korn, one of the younger drivers when it comes to the entry list in general here, you have to be able to focus. And at this point, his focus is straight up dialed in to be right on the front of the field for today. Right from the get-go, the pace was there for one of the new kids on the block as described the past couple of years.
Gage Korn, your points leader, extended his advantage on the field in yesterday's 7th round of the U.S. Trophy West Series. It looks good for him today. Puts it on pole in Junior Max ahead of Nix Eggleston. there you have it on your screen. The Mini and Micromax heading out onto the racetrack. In Mini, it was Isaac Payne this morning showing the way ahead of Gage Grant. In Micromax, it was a much tighter story. Cam Becker was quickest this morning ahead of Connor Lipka. Then it was points leader Lucas Tarango. That being said, warm-up versus qualifying is a much different story. We could expect lap 3, 4, 5 to be the laps that these guys all put their best lap. But if Junior Max is anything to go off of, lap 7 and even lap 6 was the laps that we saw Gage Korn, Eggleston, and Lemieux put their best laps down. So who knows when that money lap really is. It's all about the setup, all about the tire pressures that they put back in pit lane and on the grid. So for these drivers, they have about 7 minutes to navigate this Grand Junction Motor Speedway and put the best lap down possible. Here we go. Their out lap is complete. First flying lap is underway here for Isaac Payne up on the wheel, getting everything out of that go-kart. He's already pulled away from Gage Grant slightly on that out lap. So the two Minimax drivers out here today are going to be separated on the racetrack. It's almost like a warm-up for them, really just continuing to find more and more pace out of their chassis. In Micromax, however, like I mentioned, it is a much tighter grid there with Lucas Tarango having such a dominant season. Today, it looks as though the challenge is being taken to him with Becker showing the pace that he has.
Yeah, it's been close in that championship. We've seen that be close throughout the practice session, too, earlier on today. So I think a lot of drivers could have the chance for the race win. Pretty straightforward, I know, right? But looking at what we're seeing with Payne, though, he's already picked up a lot, and I'm noticing this a lot with the drivers, making sure they know that it's important to get straight line speed. This in particular down the front straightaway. Put the head down, get the downforce levels dealt with, as in you actually have more of a resistance if your head's sticking up like that, trying to just duck down, make it aerodynamic, keep your helmet and head out of the wind to try and get as fast as possible in these laps compared to the straightforward stance like this.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it's you'll see it throughout the day. Different drivers have different techniques in how to reduce drag. A lot of drivers just tuck their head on the steering wheel. Some of them kind of lean their head down and let the air flow over their nose cone and onto their helmet simultaneously. That tends to work sometimes. Some drivers will just sit lower in their seat to try to reduce drag. Some drivers, we saw Gage Korn do it out of this corner right here in the previous qualifying session. They'll hop out of their seats. And if you do it properly, if you kind of thrust forward, you can add slight momentum to your go-kart and really reduce the time that the engine spends at the bottom of the power band, and it can kind of boost a couple RPMs just enough to kick into that mid-range of the motor and get going a little bit quicker. So it's always fun to see the different drivers' techniques and how they can find that extra speed in terms of themselves in the seat, right? There's only so much horsepower you can get out of these motors, but you can help yourself a little bit by reducing drag, reducing the weight for a brief moment in the go-kart. So it's a strategy game, it's a chess game, but at the end of the day, Isaac Payne is winning that chess game at the moment. A 58.835 leads the Minimax class ahead of Gage Grant. There's still 4.5 minutes to go in this one. In Micromax, how about it for Connor Lipka? On board the comp kart machine, the 44 driver, absolutely rolling so far here in the opening 2.5 laps of qualifying ahead of Tyson Underwood, his teammate. Then it's Paxton Romero, Sebastian Johnson. Where's Cam Becker? He sits back in that 6th spot in Micromax. Tarango isn't out there at the moment for Micromax. Let's see if he either hits the racetrack or decides, he wants to start from the back of the grid later in the heat races. Nonetheless, Payne extends his advantage of 58.569, puts himself and Gage Grant 4/10 separating those two drivers. Cam Becker now takes the top spot of Micromax.
Yeah, Becker was amongst those, remember, who was in the 59-second bracket. That's what he just did to be able to get back into said bracket for this qualifying session. The tires are really starting to get into full bloom and full sun with the temperatures now. Right into the pattern you need. Right now, Underwood in particular has been one of the more consistent when it comes to those trying to get the tires heated up within the same 10th or so. needs to pick up a little bit more now that some of the front runners are up that extra second compared to how they started off the session now that they're in the tire band and tire window limit.
2.5 minutes to go. This is where we're going to see the times continue to tumble. For Isaac Payne, another personal best, 58.558. For most of the drivers, if you're looking at alpha timing here, it'll have a blue box around their time. That means personal best. So every single driver but Gage Grant on that last lap improved their lap time. This is around the time that we're going to see the lap times really start to fall for the next lap or two, and then they'll begin to plateau once the tires get out of that window. So Isaac Payne, purple in Minimax. Ken Becker did not improve his lap time. That was a 1 minute 6 second lap, so I presume he either let somebody by and caught some traffic on that one. Nonetheless, here is the 16 machine on your screen right now. He's the only Micromax driver in the 59-second bracket as it stands. 2/10 separates himself and second place Connor Lipka. Sebastian Johnson, this has been a great qualifying performance for him if he can hold on to that third place spot in Micro. Tyson Underwood, Romero, Coeto, Slitter, Mayers, Ayers. That is the rest of your Micromax grid as it stands. But for Cam Becker, his pole position lap just got eclipsed by Connor Lipka, 59.754. That's Connor's best lap of the day so far around the clockwise circuit here at Grand Junction Motor Speedway. But Cam Becker, 59.585. Wow, in the mid-59s for Cam Becker. That's the fastest lap we've seen here in a Micromax all day.
Yeah, and looking at the numbers too, it should be surprising to see the pace here. Cam Becker throughout the season has, at the very least, won a heat race and or a feature in just about every single start he's made. He missed 2 rounds in the month of March. That's seen him behind the point standings. That's why he's further back for the championship fight and towards the bottom of the standings. If it wasn't for those cases there, we might be talking about the championship. The 115's gone around. That's Grant.
Gage Grant, a big mistake there in the penultimate corner here at Grand Junction Motor Speedway, and that's going to be his qualifying session essentially done. Maybe he can get the go-kart back fired up, but with 30 seconds left on the clock, he's not going to have enough time to get back around and set another lap time. So Gage Grant, his chances at a pole position in Minimax is done. He'll sit second behind Isaac Payne. For Cam Becker, his best lap remains at a 59.585. Connor Lipka, last time around, could not improve on his best lap. There's still a lap and a half to go here in qualifying for these drivers if they choose to take it. Maybe Becker feels as though his lap is good enough, wants to conserve some tires. Looks as though he's still going after it here, up on the wheel, climbing the hill through the S part of the racetrack, catching up to the rear bumper there of, I believe that might have been Ayers. So for Ken Becker, one more chance to improve his lap time. Not many drivers are setting personal bests anymore in this qualifying session. That tells me that the tire windows for most of these drivers are starting to plateau here. But for Cam Becker, going to be one of the last drivers in Micromax to cross the line. So really, this is going to be his chance to cement his pole position. Round the final corner, checkered flag waves. Does he improve? Wow, 59.392. Cam Becker puts 3/10 on the Micromax field. He'll start on pole position for the 2 heat races later this afternoon. For Isaac Payne, he's on pole in a Minimax. Gage Grant second.
Becker has showcased the pace all year, and honestly might be one of your favorites for the victory as a result with what we just backed up of what session here. It's very interesting though, because your points leaders for both of these groups for this part of the session didn't end up hitting the racetrack. So they're months those up, look towards the back of their classes possibly here.
Yeah, interesting to see, Jackson Porter, Tarango not hitting the racetrack. I think mathematically, the points, it's tough for the drivers behind them to, make any headway on a championship victory. So not too surprising to not see Jackson Porter and Lucas Tarango out there. But if they do decide to hit the racetrack later in the afternoon, that'll make a very a fun couple of heat races for us to watch them come from the back of the field. There's a group of comp cards there. That's Underwood, Lipka, and Sebastian Johnson. They qualified second, third, and fourth in Micromax. They were working together all session long, and it paid off for them. So it's going to be Cam Becker versus 3 comp carts when we get ready to go for some heat racing action later in the afternoon. Hand in the air there for Sebastian Johnson, letting everybody know that he's slowing down. There's going to be 1 cart to pick up. It's going to be Gage Grant. We're going to take this time for a quick commercial break.
We're at a commercial break.
Are you looking for an advantage in your competition? Well, Kart Class has done the hard work for you. We've travelled to your racetracks to give you the inside knowledge. So what does Kart Class offer? We've got drone footage that captures the racing lines, visual markers for your braking points, acceleration zones, and the best overtake opportunities on your racetrack. Pedal cam to show you where to brake and when to accelerate, and 360-degree footage to make sure you don't miss any parts on the racetrack. We've covered 13 racetracks in the United States, and Australia, you're up next. So visit kartclass.com to get your track information.
Well, we just got done with Mini and Micro Max qualifying. On the racetrack now are the Masters Max drivers, or we like to call them the crazy old guys. Put on a good show for us always, and yesterday didn't cease to disappoint here, or didn't disappoint us at all, because it was an incredible show. Clayton Kessler, Christopher Mann, and Billy Cleveland were going after it from the moment the green flag waved in the heats and into the feature races. There's a look at Clayton Kessler. He started on pole in that final, led a majority of that race, lost it at the end to Billy Cleveland, who played a great chess game, played the patient game, played the long game. It worked out for him. Christopher Mann there came home in second place in that feature race, but it wasn't without a fight. If this warm-up session this morning is anything to go off of, it's going to be a close qualifying. If you remember correctly, Clayton Kessler had a spin in the first corner in a warm-up, lost out on a bit of important track time, I would say. So he's on a bit of the back foot heading into qualifying, but doesn't seem to slow him one bit. Opening lap looks to be pretty good for Clayton.
Yeah, very solid start. Once again, remember, tires need to get it back up to temperature here, but it was Clayton that was going back and forth with Kessler at the top of the board in the practice session. Now, does Chris Mann pick that tempo back up? To be expected here. It looks like for now that draft going to help a little bit for the car behind. It's just going to be the patience game. Once again, right down the hillside for 5 minutes to go to work with. You have to get into a full rhythm. There's not a lot of time to get this done for this class. You only got probably up to 4 laps before the tires start to really plateau like we've seen in practice.
Yeah, well, right now, lap 1 in the books. We're about to complete lap number 2. Billy Cleveland is in the best spot, in my opinion. You have Christopher Mann getting a tow off of Clayton Kessler. You have Cleveland getting a tow off of Christopher Mann, who's getting a tow off of Clayton Kessler. So we call that the double tow. So if Christopher Mann can put a good lap together and Cleveland can follow him through the corners and stay in his tow for the straightaways, he's in a great position. But as it stands, Christopher Mann put a flyer down, the only driver in the 54s as it stands. Cleveland second, Kessler, no surprise to see him third because he's the one leading this group. You rarely want to be the driver leading a group of 3 go-karts because most likely you're going to be the one that sits third in qualifying. So it would not shock me with 4.5 minutes to go whether we see Kessler or Mann kind of pull over, let Cleveland through, and they alternate, where they are in the order of the draft. Nonetheless, 2 laps complete, about to cross the stripe for lap 3 here in qualifying. Still 4.5 minutes to go. Any improvements down the order? Kessler improves slightly. There goes Christopher Mann. He pulls over, lets Cleveland through. So now, if you can time it properly, not lose too much ground to Billy Cleveland, he can get the tow off of the 658 machine. But surprisingly, with Mann and Cleveland not setting personal best laps last time around, I wonder if already maybe a bit of mistake in tire pressures or just a mistake during that lap. We'll have to wait and see with 3.5 to go. Still a lot of time left in this qualifying session. Cleveland doesn't seem to be making any headway on Kessler. Christopher Mann, surprisingly, is slowing down quite a bit here in this qualifying session. I wonder if he's going to pull in and say, you know what, that's the best I can do out of this go-kart, or if he wants that buffer between himself and any other driver on the racetrack. Let's see. Rounding the penultimate corner now, hand in the air. Christopher Mann is in the pits. He looked at his micron and said, you know what, that 54.931 is a good lap, and that's the best he's going to get out of that go-kart. He's provisionally on pole position, but I tell you what, Billy Cleveland, a personal best, 54.953, and he's caught up to the bumper now of Kessler, who lets him through. So maybe either Kessler's pulling in the pits now, or Kessler wants to draft off of Cleveland. It wouldn't surprise me, though, if we see a lot of drivers start to pull in the pits early.
Yeah, we are at that 4-lap window I was just mentioning from the practice session, so a lot of drivers have also picked up on that as well. I think Kessler has absolutely lost the draft here. Cleveland, I think, is still in push mode, at least with how he's driving the car, with how he's not backing down. He is someone with plenty of experience. The Rotex US Trophy final last year was amongst the top 5 of the Masters.
Yeah, Cleveland, one of the more experienced drivers that we have here on our field, and he's in the pits as well. Kessler in the pits. So, the top 3 are in the pits. Provisionally, Christopher Mann is your pole sitter. 54.931, Cleveland second, Kessler third. There's still 2 drivers on the racetrack, Michael Haltala being one of them. That's been a great improvement for him from what we saw in the warm-up session. Only about 1.1 seconds back from the lead. So, continuing to improve, continuing to find the setup that works for him around this clockwise layout of the Grand Junction Motor Speedway. Rene Bine there sits in 5th, a personal best for him as well. So lap time still starting to tumble for these drivers out there on the racetrack with 1.5 minutes to go.
Yeah, for them right now, I think it's keeping on getting a feel for things for the race itself. They're down towards the bottom half of the order right now, so may as well see, is there anything else I can adjust before I go into that pit lane and tell my team, okay, I got to make this change. I need to pick this up when getting some clean space right before I pull back in here for you guys. So we'll see if that ends up being the case here, especially that top 3 within about 2 and near 2/3 tenths, in fact. in separation. That's going to be a fun fight for Masters today.
1 minute left in qualifying. About 2 laps for these drivers if they choose to take it. The last couple of laps, Haltala and Rene Bine have not set personal best. You can hear the tires start to scream a little bit there, already losing a little bit of grip. So that tells me that the plateau is already starting to hit here for these drivers who maybe set the tire pressures a little bit too low for this qualifying session. Wouldn't surprise me at all to see them pull into pits this time around, or just stay on the racetrack, learn a bit setup-wise for the longer heat races coming up later in the afternoon in about an hour or so time for these Masters Max drivers. Couple more corners to navigate here for the 687. That's Rene Bine here. Now 2 corners to go. Does he elect to take the extra lap, or does he pull in the pits? Let's see. Hand stays down. That means he's going to come past the stripe and cross the line to complete another lap. And it's a personal best, a 56.780 there for Rene Bine, his best lap of the day. Checkered flag is out, and that's going to be the end of the Masters Max qualifying, where we saw Christopher Mann put it on pole position ahead of Billy Cleveland, Clayton Kessler, Michael Haltala, and the driver on your screen right now, Rene Bine. We'll take this moment for a quick commercial break, and when we come back, Senior Max qualifying is underway.
Studies show that even the best current generation of simulators only convince 50% of the human brain that they are real. Here at Simcraft, that just isn't realistic enough. Developed to offer the most realistic karting sim experience in the world, all testing has shown that the physics engine used in Simcraft's Grid 1 model convinces 90% of the human brain that you are actually on track. Now that is the real deal.
So you will finally want to get behind the wheel, huh?
Yeah, I've been shooting for 3 years and I've never got to drive.
Well, you're gonna need some more gear than just your helmet. Why don't you go to shopakr.com? They got their inventory online and they'll ship it the same day if you order before 5:30 p.m. Eastern.
They got shoes?
Yep.
Gloves?
Yep.
Rip protectors?
Got those too.
Can they make me go fast?
No. Here at Acceleration Kart Racing, we've got everything you need to get on track. What happens next? Well, that's on you. Check us out online at shopakr.com.
Here at MPG Motorsports, our main goal is to provide the best pathway into professional motorsports for our entire team, drivers and mechanics alike. We're based out of Whiteland Raceway Park in Indiana. For more information, contact us at chase@mpg-motorsports.com.
Welcome back to Grand Junction Motor Speedway here. We're ready and set for the Senior Max drivers hitting the racetrack now to begin their 7-minute qualifying session. Cooper Auclair is going to lead the pack out on to the racetrack. Behind him, his teammate Theo Cacati, and then it's Gio Santora as well. The 3 that were the quickest in yesterday's main event going the counterclockwise way. Then that's Griffin Dowler in that 4th spot. Dylan Archer as well in this group. Surprised to see Auclair go out up front, but maybe with the pace that he showed in warm-up, he feels as though he doesn't need a drafting partner to set a quick lap.
Well, we've already seen that work out to be a good strategy for at least one class today. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens again here. One consistent thing we're seeing throughout the sessions, though, is a lot of speed from the Comp Kart machines in general, regardless of the class today. It popped up in the Micro Maxes. It's popped up so far in the sessions when it comes to Senior Max. They seem to be very comfortable, Cooper Auclair and his team, for this race today.
Yeah, it's been pretty impressive to see what, pace Auclair has been able to get out of that 321 machine. It proves why he is the points leader heading into this weekend, and he's one round away from clinching a ticket to the Road Tax Grand Finals in October in Sarno, Italy. But he still needs to navigate 2 more heats and a feature race after this qualifying before we can talk about exactly what he can win as a championship winner in Senior Max. Outlaps complete. First lap is about to be in the books here for Cooper Auclair. Let's see where it puts him in line. 53.801. That's a quick outlap there for Auclair, the only driver in the 53s here so far, but we're only 1 lap in, 6 minutes to go in qualifying. We can expect the times to continue to tumble, but a 53.8 on your outlap is still pretty blistering.
Yeah, that pretty much tells me that Cooper Auclair is right now down in the right and safe zone of what he wants to have. Just comfortable with the racetrack, comfortable with the drift, comfortable with the pace, comfortable being able to bend the corners, not too much corner exit scrub on the speeds when it comes to a slide or anything like that. He's just near perfect when it comes to his feel on this racetrack here so far.
Yeah, it looks real good. I mean, he's pulling away from the group behind him, doesn't need anybody to push him, doesn't need anybody to work with him here in order to get the lap time. You see him flip the flap on the Senior Max motor there. That's just to adjust any engine temp, trying to, maximize the horsepower that he can get out of that motor. 53.494, 3/10 on the field as it stands. Kikati in second, Santora third. Then it's Spencer Smith. He had a rough day yesterday, spun around in that main event. It's a good comeback for him to be in 4th as it stands. Adam Rylance, another 5th place position for the moment. Griffin Dowler leads that group. That's Dowler, Archer, Rylance in that group of 3 or 4 go-karts. If they continue to work together, they can get up to that group of Gio Santora and Theo Kikati. To me, this is a solid group to be in. You always want to be the 3rd kart in line. That's generally the rule of thumb, because if somebody pulls out of line, you at least are still guaranteed someone to draft off of. So for Griffin Dowler, I'm shocked that he would like to lead this group, but with the pace that he is showing, it seems to be working out for him. But that lap, he fell back to 8th. Spencer Smith up to 4th. Rylance stays in 5th. Now, yeah, Griffin Dowler understands that, listen, if I keep leading this group, I'm going to qualify outside the top 10. So he lets the 3 of Rylance, Smith, and Archer by. He wants to be the 4th car in line here and see what he can do.
Yeah, a lot of draft games going on at this point. Some drivers saying, let's work with my team, let's work with my car mate, try and help each other get higher up in the running order. Seen that especially with some of the neon and white carts working together. But for others, if you don't have that teamwork, don't have that ability rather, to find a teammate, it's so much harder because you might be all on different strategies on how to get the run here. No major changes on the pylon. There is one thing I've noticed though, the 397 camp. We talked about the championship battle. That is Lemieux's kart. Right now, Lemieux is still in 14th place, stuck in the mid-pack with 3 minutes to go.
Yeah, there's Frederick Lemieux trying to get everything out of that 397 machine. Just hasn't seemed to be able to get acclimated to the clockwise layout here at Grand Junction Motor Speedway. But nonetheless, heat racing and feature racing is a totally different story. So she'll still have her opportunity to go and claim some points later in the day, but struggling for pace as it stands in 14th position, about 8/10 back from what Auclair is able to do out there. His best lap, looking down the order, lap 2, lap 3, lap 2, lap 2, lap 3. The only driver to put their best lap on lap 4 or later is Landon Billy. Every other driver, lap 2 and lap 3 was the money lap. So it wouldn't surprise me one bit with 2 minutes to go in qualifying. If that trend continues, a lot of drivers may start to pull into the pits. And I think that's what we're starting to see. As Lemieux sets her best lap of the session, that puts her 10th for the moment. So she put her best lap on lap 5. Her and Landon Billy, the only drivers to not do it on lap 2 or 3.
Yeah, and that seems to follow the trend again we've seen throughout the weekend, especially throughout the session here. Wouldn't be surprised with Lemieux especially now being passed here that She raises the hand pretty soon to enter the pit lane, if not this time, next time by, with the fact there's the struggle starting to build up here. There is one driver keeping an eye on to see if there's a move to 357. That is Joel Lewis. She is amongst those who picked up time in the final practice on the 5th and 6th laps before to end off that session. We'll see if that happens here in qualifying.
Yeah, I think the hand was in the air there for Lemieux. It was. So she's going to pull in the pits. Her session is done. The best she can start is 10th. But looking down the order, as drivers continue to come into the pit lane, no one really improving on their previous laps here. So as the session plateaus here with less than a minute to go in qualifying, at most 2 laps to go for any driver still on the racetrack, one of them being Travis Varney there, sitting in 11th. Griffin Dowler, another driver, still trying to set good lap times. He sits in 7th at the moment, hand in the air. His session is done. He will not improve on that 53.973. A couple of the drivers out there on the racetrack, they're all coming into the pits now here, even before the checkered flag is out. They decided, you know what, this session is done. Cooper Auclair on pole position by 0.2 of a second over Gio Santora. Then it's Theo Kikati in 3rd, Spencer Smith 4th, Adam Rylance. That's your top 5. That is Micah Hendricks, Griffin Dowler in 7th, Charlie Hone in that 8th spot, Dylan Archer 9th, Frederic Lemieux rounding out your top 10 here at the beautiful Grand Junction Motor Speedway.
One of the best qualifying sessions. The one thing you can really say, Auclair, yet again, set the standard, set the tone. It's going to be a fun race time in a few minutes' time.
As the rest of the Senior Max grid heads on into the pit lane, we'll take this brief break to switch streams and go behind the paywall before we get ready for some heat racing action.